Monopoly's been bringing people together for almost 50 years.
Monopoly sucks.
Nobody's too young to play the Monopoly game.
People all over will be winning.
You can get rich.
Corner the market in utilities. You can't lose.
Monopoly sucks. But I actually disagree. I have had an obsession with Monopoly since I was 5 or 6 years old. I'm going to tell you why Monopoly is actually really great and why it doesn't suck.
How did I make it big? I know how to play the game.
When I was around 7 years old, my entire family had gotten together and played a big game of Monopoly. There are 6 of us, so 6 players in the game. I distinctly remember that my dad ended up with all of the pink properties and all of the orange properties, with hotels on all of them. I was one of the first ones out in the game. From there, my obsession with Monopoly skyrocketed. I would play Monopoly almost every day. My friend and I had all of the property prices memorized, so we didn't have to look up the cards, we could just pass money back and forth. In fact, we would do the math in our heads, so we'd go through 2 or 3 turns and then just pay each other the differences of what we'd owed at the end of that. Then came grade 3 in school, where I got to do a research project on anything I wanted. Of course, both my friend and I did our projects on Monopoly, learning who invented it, what the history of it is, why it's such a great game. It turns out that the game was invented by Charles Darrow, or at least popularized by Charles Darrow, which isn't to be confused with Charles Darwin. He did not invent Monopoly, he invented tortoises or something. Darrow based his game on The Landlord's Game by Lizzie Magie, which was similar to Monopoly, but it was to show how monopolies in industry were a bad thing and how they can bankrupt so many other people and really want to diversify the market. Since then, the popularity of Monopoly has absolutely exploded.
Monopoly game, Monopoly money.
And like I said, I didn't just like Monopoly, I was obsessed with Monopoly. I didn't just play the board game, I had the computer game. I remember putting the disc into the computer so that I could play Monopoly. I can even still sing a lot of that song that played during the credits once the game was over. Come on, let's play Monopoly. Bing, bing. Cash bound with Richie property. Bing, bing. I even would look up Monopoly strategy guides so that I could beat my family, so I could beat my friends. And you might be wondering, what sort of strategy is in Monopoly? Isn't it just dice roll, the properties you land on? But there is a lot of decision making that goes into it. The first is when you land on a property, you have to decide if you want to buy it or if you don't. Generally, especially at the beginning of the game, you almost always want to buy the properties, especially the high value ones, the orange ones, the red ones, the ones that get landed on a lot. The other really big thing that comes with Monopoly and any game with dice roll is probabilities and statistics. Now, I didn't fully understand statistics back when I was 8 or 9 years old, but I understood that there's a higher chance of rolling certain numbers on the dice versus other numbers. So you have to consider not just which properties will give you the most money or the most profit for the investment you put into them, but also what are the chances that somebody will actually land there, not just on this turn, but in the rest of the game as a whole.
Monopoly's gone Pokemon.
At Monopoly Disney Edition.
It's Monopoly Fortnite.
Monopoly and Super Mario join forces.
It's Monopoly, the SpongeBob edition.
When I was a kid, the novelty versions of Monopoly were insanely popular. Every movie, every TV show had its own version of Monopoly. And these are essentially just reskins. They don't have different rules, they don't have different money. It's just a way to incorporate some fun references into the game you already know. I never bought myself any of these novelty versions of Monopoly. I knew that they were just regular Monopoly, but with different characters and different things on them. However, because everybody knew I liked Monopoly, people would gift me these ones. So here are the versions of Monopoly that I can remember I had as a kid. Original Monopoly, The Simpsons, SpongeBob, Phineas and Ferb, NHL, the original 6, Classic Collector's Edition, Pokemon, Back to the Future, Disney, Mega Monopoly, and of course, a Monopoly travel set, so that I could play Monopoly anywhere I went. But how does Monopoly stack up against other games? To better compare the games, I've divided them into 4 different eras. The first era is historic games. These are things like chess, checkers, backgammon, Mancala, Games that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and people still play them to this day. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and we saw a lot of brands and iconic brands start to come out. Things like Ford, Coca-Cola really blew up in popularity. Even Disney first started in the 1920s. And really, it was this focus on branding and production that continued well into the mid-1900s and brought us games like Monopoly, The Game of Life, Battleship. I'm calling these games classic games. They're games that pretty much everybody has heard of, pretty much everybody has played, and you still see them around. They're ones that you'd say what it is, people know what it is. The next era I'm calling modern classics. These are ones that have probably come out in the last 30 years. They're popular, they're fun to play, and lots of people have heard of them. These are games like Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride. The final era is modern games. I don't actually have a list of any games here because you wouldn't have heard of them. They haven't become these classics yet, whereas all of these other ones have already cemented their place as great games. And some of these new games actually have really great concepts, things that are so much fun to play. Create an ecosystem with as much diversity and uniqueness as possible. Create the most beautiful painting. Try and have one of your opponents, but not all of your opponents, guess which one of the pictures you are describing in one word or less. There actually are a lot of newer versions of Monopoly. Things like Mega Monopoly, Monopoly Gamer, even Monopoly Deal. But I wanted to focus on the original version of Monopoly, the one that has a square board that takes a roll of 10 to get from one corner to the next. Now, I love 3D printing, and I do a lot with my 3D printers. So I was seeing what could I 3D print to make Monopoly better. When you look up Monopoly on Maker World, you get a bunch of aesthetic things, some cool little trinkets like the jail cage, but nothing that really stood out to me as anything that will drastically improve or change the way the game is played. Now, Monopoly actually has added things and upgraded the game over the years. The original Monopoly didn't even have prices for the properties on the board. Now, this new change is just something we take for granted, but it shows how there were steps to the evolution of the game to get it to an improved state. Another thing, which is a more recent addition, is the addition of the speed dice. Now, I don't actually have a Monopoly speed dice, so I'm going to 3D print one. And 15 minutes later, it is ready to go. The Monopoly speed dice is a 6-sided dice. 3 of the sides are just normal numbers. A 1, a 2, and a 3. 1 bus and 2 Monopoly Man sides. Now the bus is pretty interesting. It allows you to choose which combination of the other 2 dice you want to move with. So for example, if you roll a 4 and a 2, you can move 4 squares, you can move 2 squares, or you can move the normal 6 total of the 2 dice. Now, to me, the real game changer is the Monopoly Man. The Monopoly Man allows you to move forward on the board to the next unowned property. Now, this virtually eliminates the chance that there's just one property left that nobody has bought, or everybody is rolling around just trying to land on that last orange one before you start making trades and start deciding how you want to proceed with the rest of the game. Once all the properties are bought, the Monopoly Man takes you forward to the next property that you have to pay rent on. And what this means is that you can mortgage the rest of your properties so that the only ones other people have to pay rent on are your ones with 3 houses, a hotel, and they have to pay you a lot more rent. My family would take advantage of this, and there would only be 2 or 3 sets that were unmortgaged, so that whenever somebody rolled onto it, they had to pay big rent. This works especially well when there's only 2 players left, because the other player is guaranteed to have to pay you your highest rent as long as you have hotels and houses on there with everything else mortgaged. The last real thing when it comes to the speed die is when you roll triples. So the 1, 2, and 3, they usually just get added to your roll, but if you roll triples, 3 1s, 3 2s, or 3 3s, then you can move anywhere on the board. And with that, 1, it can allow you to pick up some properties early on. You can get Boardwalk on your very first roll if you end up rolling triples. Now, because my family could abuse the Monopoly Man so much. We made it a rule that the Monopoly Man doesn't just take you to the next one you have to pay rent on, it takes you to the next property that you don't own. And that way you can't just mortgage everything, and it becomes a little bit more of a strategy to keep everything up rather than just mortgaging it and waiting to see who's lucky or not first. What this means is that we have introduced our own rule that allows Monopoly to be better, to be more enjoyable for us. And this is actually, to me, the main reason why Monopoly is great. With house rules, you can introduce whatever you want to make the game more fun. If you think that it takes too long going around collecting the properties at the start of the game, sure, you can make it so you deal out properties at the start or auction them right at the start of the game. If you think the game is too slow when you go to jail, make it so after 2 rolls in jail you have to get out rather than 3. There are even some house rules that have become so ingrained in normal play that lots of people don't even realize they're house rules. Putting money in the middle of the board so that when you land on free parking you get to collect it is actually a house rule. There's nothing in the official Monopoly rules that states you'll collect that. Another common house rule is making it so that you can't collect any rent from other players while you're in jail. You might want to pay to get out of jail or avoid landing on the go to jail square so that you can actually still have some sort of income. With house rules being a thing, that means I can change the rules so that Monopoly is as fun, exciting, and chaotic as possible.
Monopoly Chaos Edition. Not 1 dice, not 2 dice, but 10 dice. Cash? Don't need it. We pay with Venmo. It has corporate sponsors that are filled with a different corporate sponsor. No more jail. Instead, we're doing community service. This is where you have to do real world chores. No more owning properties. Instead, everything is a subscription service.
Fast forward many years, and I found myself in a gift shop. And in that gift shop, I saw this. This is the world's smallest Monopoly.
Look how incredible this is. It has 2 little die, all of the houses and hotels you need, all of the little plastic pieces. Unfortunately, they're plastic and not metal. The cardboard board that folds out, and all you really need now is a friend to play it with.
Because of this, it gave me the inspiration to start 3D printing some other really miniature games. So I made the world's smallest chess set and the world's smallest Connect 4 game as well. And yes, it does come apart and things actually work. There goes a piece. Now, because 3D printing is really my main focus, my main hobby right now, I was thinking, what could I do with this game to make it better? Could I 3D print a smaller version? What could I 3D print with Monopoly? And really, I decided there's no way I could match the quality and the detail present on this, especially with FDM 3D printing. So I made a really big one instead. I 3D printed this giant Monopoly battleship. All I did was take the model for a regular sized battleship and blow it up to be twice the size of my print bed. The pieces in Monopoly are just so iconic. You have the hat, the dog, the shoe, and the car, of course. But really, it's, to me, the battleship is the one with the most detail, the one that really captures what it is to be a Monopoly piece. So, if people actually don't like Monopoly, or if Monopoly actually is bad, then why is it worth billions of dollars? And I'm not exaggerating when the Monopoly brand is worth billions of dollars. Really, it's a combination of different things. Partially, it's just nostalgia. It's a game that everybody has played. Partially, it's branding. You see the Monopoly logo. You see the Monopoly Man. It screams the game. You know exactly what you're talking about. Even if Monopoly isn't the best board game, it is the best. It has had the best marketing of any game. There are Monopoly world records, Monopoly competitions, Monopoly theme parks, which I went to, by the way, and it was absolutely terrible. So don't go. It's something that has stood the test of time, and I think still will continue to stand the test of time. Things will change. It's not always going to be exactly the same. Basketball hasn't always been the same. There used to not be a 3-point line. They introduced a 3-point line. Monopoly introduced the speed dice. So we don't know what's next, but as far as I can tell, Monopoly's here to stay, and I'm glad because it has been such a big part of my life.